people feel like they're missing the mark with themselves and they would rather it be another way.
Getting the ick is so incredibly dismissive. Oh, we went out to dinner and he wore sandals with shorts and I had to leave him. But to me, it's a very easy way for someone to call a silly thing a red flag. I interviewed a dismissive woman one time. She told her story about how one time she ended her relationship with her boyfriend because he didn't know how to make tea correctly.
All the men listening, work on your steeping skills.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Good People, episode 33. Today, I was joined for the second time by Dr. Jennie Rosier. She is an associate professor in the School of Communications at JMU. In today's episode, we talked about the curious dating patterns of Gen Z. She defined terms like what it means to get the ick, the fact that it takes courage to have a long-term partnership, and much more. In other news, this episode is brought to you by Die Tired. Jonathan at Die Tired Co. was kind enough to send us over some of their service caps, and they're sick. All of the caps on the website are manufactured in the US. They look great and they feel great. There's also some shirts and sweatshirts available for purchase too. Head on over to dietiredco.com. If you like something and want to get it, use code GP15 at checkout for 15% off. If you guys support the show and what we're doing here, that's the best way to support us. Use code GP15 at checkout. Before we begin, if you guys are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week's episodes. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the show. I will say you were our guest on episode number 4, and you are by far, I hear from people, the most like, you got to get Jennie back on the show.
Oh, come on.
I'm being serious. And like my sister-in-law, future sister-in-law, every time I see her is like, I'm obsessed. She's listened to your podcast.
Oh, I love that. I love to hear that.
Yeah. So welcome back.
Very educational. Can help a lot of people. Thank you.
Yeah. You're one of the people too that, I listen to a lot of podcasts from, on all sorts of topics. And I feel like you are one of the people that we could probably talk about anything as it relates to life and people, and it would probably be a good episode. You're very well versed in that.
Thank you. I try. I'm trying my hardest.
Last time you were on, I talked a bit about, I was just asking you what you were studying, and you said essentially like the dating habits of young people.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what our conversation is going to center around today.
Okay.
How long have you been looking into this, or what brought you to that as an interest of research?
So I teach several classes at JMU, but one of them is called Communication in Romantic Relationships. I actually created it back in maybe 2013, 2014, and I have taught it once a year or sometimes twice a year, but usually once a year ever since. So I've been teaching it for a while now, and every semester I'm fascinated by the kinds of questions that the students ask. And I often will see trends in the kinds of questions that are asked. So I remember early-ish on in this classes, when I started it years ago, a decade ago, I remember students were very concerned about hookup culture. And it was very much like, is hookup culture okay? And that was a very common question, and about questions about how can I trust my partner and get my partner to trust me. So those were very common themes that I was asked all the time. And then as the years went on, I started to notice that students were less concerned about if hookup culture is a good or bad thing, and more about how do I stop myself from being involved in hookup culture? So it was kind of, the way I saw it was I was being asked permission to be in hookup culture in the beginning. The students were very much like, can I do it, Jennie? Like, is it okay?
Yeah.
And then later it turned into help me, like help me get out of it. I don't like it. I don't know anyone who likes it, and we are kind of fed up with it, and we kind of want to get rid of it. And so when that started happening, I don't know, I was just fascinated. I will say that I had a anonymous Q&A class period. That's how I get a lot of their questions. They're very open, but sometimes we have anonymous Q&A day and they can ask me anything they want. And so we just had that last week. And this class kind of started asking me for permission again. So I don't know what is going on, but irregardless of why or what part of hookup culture they're interested in, I became really interested in them last semester, so last year, when a lot of our conversations went around these like words that they've made up, that Gen Z has made up, like getting the ick or situationship, or I'm trying to think of the talking phase. And I started asking them, what do these things mean? What is it? I don't even know the words. Like, they don't even make sense to me. And so once they started talking about that, I really started connecting some of the dots where it sounded to me like a lot of the things that they were dealing with, good things and bad things, were very dismissive in nature. And so I decided to create a research project last January, where I interviewed Gen Zers. So Gen Zers are anywhere from, I think the youngest ones were born in 2009. And the oldest were born in like 1996, 98. I mean, all the generations are very debatable, right? I mean, my husband was born right on the cusp of millennial, and he's like, I am not a fucking millennial. I'm like, okay, Gen Xer. He's like, I am a proud Gen Xer. And I'm like, you're barely, but okay. So I think the generation dates are kind of wishy-washy. But Gen Z is defined as that. And so they're the youngest group of daters right now. So I asked a bunch of them to be interviewed. I conducted 1-hour interviews with about 40 of them. And I just asked them everything about their dating. And I found some pretty interesting things about their dating. So yeah, it was a cool project.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think about that often. Technically, I'm a Gen Zer. My little brother, who's 7 years younger than me, is a Gen Zer, obviously. Yeah. And then we both have two older siblings, 1997 and 1995. And I still very much feel like I am a part of like my older siblings group.
Exactly.
And like I say this all the time. It's hilarious. You know, like I don't remember a time without the internet or video games or whatever, but I played like a GameCube growing up, you know, so I still liked going outside and, you know, and experiencing the world and childhood in that way. But yeah, it is crazy because my brother is 16 and he's got a girlfriend. And so I'm like seeing it firsthand how that plays out. Obviously, I think that probably changes as you get into college and you move out from home, but it sounds like that's the population of people you were chatting with.
Yeah. Yeah. So I chatted with college age students. So everyone was over 18. So college age, but most of the college age students were juniors and seniors. And then all the way up, the oldest participant was 26 years old. So it was 20-ish to 26. I think 19 was like the youngest, but yeah, it was a very specific group. So, and I found differences between the people who were in college and the people who were out of college, which I thought was also fascinating. So, yeah.
Yeah. I could imagine a number of reasons why that's the case, being like a newly out of college person in the last couple of years. But we talked a bit about it at the beginning. This started from like a hookup culture thing. Is that term hookup culture synonymous with young people dating?
I think that it is an avenue that many young people are taking. So many young people are immersing themselves in the hookup culture, and they frequently want to know my opinion about it. And this is my opinion. So my opinion of hookup culture is that you can do whatever you want to do as long as the next day you still feel good about who you are. There are people out there that can sleep with a different person every week and they genuinely feel okay about it. Then there are other people who sleep with a different person every month or just have one night stand and they do not feel good about themselves. So to me, it's less about is hookup culture good or bad and more about how does your participation in hookup culture make you feel. And so if you feel okay, then do you. But I would bet that if you really thought about how you're feeling the next day, not many of you actually feel okay. And so if you don't feel good about who you are, about the behaviors that you are enacting, then there has to be a change. You have to make a change. The other thing that hookup culture does is it sometimes sets you up for failure. So if you are, let's say that you're really in it, like you are really sleeping with different people frequently, you are having very casual flings with people, and you are not getting terribly intimate with anyone, right? When you do that over and over and over again, and then one day you find the one, right? One day you find this person that you want to be with long term, which, by the way, every single person in my study and almost every single student I've ever taught ever says that that is what they want. So I usually have 1 or 2 students every semester out of 90 students that say that they don't want serious long-term monogamy. Other than those 2 people, everyone else wants it. And every single participant in my study said that was the end goal. So if that is your end goal and you are engaging in these kinds of relationships, you are creating a pattern of behavior that your brain and your body is going to get used to. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I am saying it's going to make the achievement of your goal harder. If you are creating this pattern where you are sleeping with a different person, it's very exciting. There's lots of first time emotions, lots of dopamine, lots of adrenaline, lots of just excitement. And then you get to change it to a new person the next, and the hunt. Lots of students always say that the hunt is fun. That beginning, getting to know someone is fun. If you're doing that over and over and over again, and then it's like, by the way, now you found this one person and you're going to have sex with only them for the rest of your life. And you're going to have these deep, wonderful conversations with only them the rest of your life. Your brain is going to be like, no, I really liked all that adrenaline. I really liked all that dopamine. And it's not going to make it impossible. It's just going to make it harder for you to readjust. And a serious relationship is already so much adjustment. But you don't want to fight this uphill battle.
Yeah. What do you theorize is the onset of this? It sounds like, just hearing you talk, the ease of hooking up, probably due to technology, online dating apps and things like that. Are there any other things that you could point to or speak on specifically that why have we all of a sudden gotten to this like hookup culture?
Okay, so I want to say very clearly, it is not all of a sudden boomers were hooking up with people. So it is not a Gen Z problem. It has been a progression of multiple things in our culture that have made this to be more of an acceptable practice. So people have been having one night stands and sleeping around and being casual for centuries. This is not anything new. Just now it's more okay. And people are willing to talk about it, right? People are willing to say, oh yeah, I've slept with this many people, and they're not ashamed about it as much as they used to be. So it's been around for a long time. The acceptance of it, I really think, is who is driving the ship, right? Who is controlling the perpetuation of these cultural norms. And it's not a single person. It's a combination of the media, the music we're listening to, the topics that we're talking about, the values that are being instilled in children who then grow up to be these adults, right? And I think that we have, there's a lot of movements like the women's movement and feminism and the rise of the independent woman that has really, they've all come together to make this an okay thing. And like I said, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody wants to participate in it, but when it is something that is so accepted and talked about all the time, and it is a fun thing to do, right? Sex is fun. So, and hormones are, rushing through young people's bodies. It becomes kind of like enticing to participate in. But I think that from my conversations with young people, they are not all satisfied with it. They are not all happy with it. They're engaging in it reluctantly because it's what they do. It's what is done. There has been a rise in dismissive attachment over the last couple of decades among young people. So there are not more dismissively attached people than anybody else. People are still mostly secure, but it has been a rise of dismissive attachment. Dismissive attachment is characterized by this desire for independence, this a fear of relying on someone too much, a fear of emotionally disclosing with someone too much, right? A dismissive person has a very high opinion of themselves, which we have done as parents. We have given our kids so much self-esteem. Many parents have done this, really tried really hard to give your kids a lot of self-esteem. And sometimes it's not genuine self-esteem. It's this like fake mask of self-esteem. You can do anything you set your mind to. You're amazing. You're perfect. You're wonderful. Don't lower your standards. Don't settle. You're great. Do you. You're the most amazing human on the planet, right? We've blown the kids' heads up, and then they go in the dating world and they're like, I'm amazing. I'm wonderful. And that doesn't really work as much in a romantic relationship. So we have had an increase in dismissive attachment. All Gen Zers are not dismissively attached, though. There's secure, there's disorganized, there's anxious people. But because I'm arguing that like dismissive attachment has taken the wheel, like their dismissiveness is guiding the ship. And so when you're told that the way you date is to remain distant, to don't get too close, don't be too much of anything. A lot of these dating trends that are happening right now are just hugely dismissive, and dismissiveness doesn't help people achieve the end goal. It doesn't help people achieve that long-term monogamous relationship.
What you're saying is striking some chords with me in another context of thoughts that I've been giving to the world and society recently, which is that everything is very me, and it's not about us. And the most obvious example that I point to in conversation with people is like what family means to a lot of cultures outside the United States. Like I think there's a assumption everywhere else that like you're part of this family forever.
Yeah.
And like my family's very much like that, where it's like my parents are going to be my parents until they're gone. And if I need anything, I can always rely on them, or, things like that. And I think a lot of hearing you say that this connection to the dismissive attachment makes a lot of sense to me, because I play around with this idea a lot of most people nowadays want to pursue greatness instead of goodness, which I think is a mistake, because greatness is about you as an individual and what you can achieve. And there's a sacrificial nature to goodness that greatness doesn't have, where it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to give up this part of me for this person that I love, or not even that I love. I'm just going to do this thing because it's the right thing to do for humanity, or what have you.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems like you're going in that same direction too, not even necessarily to point out that hookup culture is wrong. To use your words earlier, if somebody feels totally comfortable doing that, they're more than welcome to engage in
Yeah.
that behavior and have the freedom to do that, right? But it seems like where you're directing your attention is that people feel like they're missing the mark with themselves and they would rather it be another way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the main things that in the discussions that I had with these participants was, I asked them early on, what is your long-term goal? And all of them said they wanted long-term monogamous marriage, whether it's legal marriage or religious marriage, they want that connection. And I would say, so how are your relationships, or how is dating helping you achieve those goals? And they couldn't answer. They're like, I guess if I'm dating you, I'm trying to like practice for marriage. I'm like, yeah, but you guys aren't even dating. I mean, this idea of are you familiar with the talking phase?
Yeah,
It's
I've
such
talked to plenty
crap.
of people.
They expect to connect with people online through a dating app, or like you see someone in a party and then you look them up online, right? So gone are the days of walking up to a stranger in a bar. In fact, when I brought that up with every single participant, they were like, ugh, I would be so creeped out if a stranger came and talked to me in a bar. So part of me thinks that the online dating is really great. It's like it takes away a lot of the pressure. You are looking for someone, and I mean, you're just looking at looks, but you're looking for someone and you are picking them, and this awkward conversation doesn't have to happen. But part of me also worries that we're missing out on the opportunity to be vulnerable in those initial interactions, where you have to like get the balls to walk up to someone. And yes, it typically falls on the man, and that is horrible. I wish it was a two-way street, but that you had to like get the courage to go up and speak to someone because you were genuinely interested in them.
Mm.
And instead of just, yep, nope. Oh, maybe. Nope. I mean, it's so disconnected, right? And so I think that they start on the dating apps, and then if they want to continue some kind of connection, whatever that is, they can enter this talking phase. And the talking phase has very little rules. So it can include sex, or it cannot include sex. It can include physical dates where you go out for coffee or drinks, or it can just be talking online. It can include conversations with other people. With each other, or it can just include texting or snapping, sending pictures to each other of what you're doing during the day. How superficial is that? I mean, it's like, oh, we're talking. Well, how are you talking? We're sending pictures to each other.
Yeah.
Every day. We're in a snap streak. That means it's serious, because you're sending photos with a tagline to each other. It's so just disconnected. And then that talking phase can last anywhere from a few weeks to months. I talked to some people who said they had been in a talking phase before for 10 months and then decided to actually start dating. I mean, one of my participants said, our parents met and dated for a few years and got married. I could talk to a man for 10 months and then start dating. And then we have to date for 2 years. And then he has commitment issues. So then we have to date for another 2 years. And then we have to be engaged for 2 years. It's like everything is stretched out. And I don't want it to seem like I think people should meet each other, date for a year, and get married. I don't think that either. But it's this stretching out of a process that doesn't need to be that long. And that's such a dismissive way to move through romantic relationships. And so after the talking phase, you either have a direct conversation and you enter an exclusive relationship, which is what is hoped for, right? Or somebody gets the ick which is
What is that? I've never heard of that.
so you getting the ick is so incredibly dismissive. So it would be like if you went out on a date with someone, women get the ick more than men. It is something very superficial for the most part. I've been told that it started off as a joke, like a joke on TikTok, where a woman would say something like, "Oh, we went out to dinner and he wore sandals with shorts. Ick." And I had to leave him. And then they end the relationship over something small and trivial. They make a mountain out of a molehill. So they take something that's really silly. He laughed loudly. It gave me the ick. I couldn't do it. And so I ended the relationship, or it created conflict, or it made me not as interested in him anymore, or it just made me feel weird around him for longer than it should have. And it's usually superficial. It's usually laughable. I asked them what are some of the things that you've gotten the ick for, most of the men participants had said they never got the ick. They're like, I don't know. I've never gotten the ick. I've heard women talk about it, but I've never gotten it. But to me, it's a very easy way for someone to call a silly thing a red flag, right?
Yeah.
A red flag is something that's supposed to actually end the relationship. It is very serious. It is a deal breaker. Putting mayonnaise on a sandwich is not a red flag. But they're getting the ick, and then they're making the mayonnaise a red flag. It's just so silly, but it's a very dismissive way, very dismissively attached people have been known to fixate on a character flaw of their partner and then make that be the end of the relationship, when what's really happening inside is things are getting too serious. There's too much emotional disclosure. They are scared of losing their independence. And so they fixate on this small thing to say that that's what caused the end of the relationship, that they just can't handle somebody who puts mayonnaise on their sandwich. And when it's really about a deep-seated fear that they're wearing
it's a projection of internal struggle or feelings.
Yes. I interviewed a dismissive woman one time for my podcast. And she told her story about how one time she ended her relationship with her boyfriend because he didn't know how to make tea correctly. They were 6 or 7 months in. Things were starting to get serious. She asked him to make tea and he made it incorrectly. And she said, "We are done." And so
all the men listening, work on your steeping skills.
And so this idea of getting the ick is so dismissive. It gives people an out of a relationship, and it's becoming, so it's all, getting the ick has always been something that dismissively attached people have done, but now it's becoming mainstream so that even people who don't experience dismissive attachment are using it. And this is where I'm seeing a danger, right? So even when an anxious person who has a fear of losing connection, who wants to be in a relationship, who's very dedicated, who never would have gotten the ick before, but because this is a cultural phenomenon in their dating, is willing to reluctantly engage in this behavior and say, "Ew, I got the ick, I can't be with him," even though deep down they don't want to, because it's so pervasive. Right? We engage in things all the time we don't want to do. We behave, we buy things we didn't need to buy. We, wear things we didn't need to wear, or even things that we didn't even like, right? Even my 14-year-old daughter wanted me to buy her Crocs. I'm like, "Vivi, Crocs are so ugly. I cannot even believe you want to wear them." Now, you love Crocs.
I can't. I'm not following you on this one. I wore Crocs over here.
Okay, but listen. So I think Crocs are ugly. She's like, "But everybody has Crocs. Everybody has Crocs." So I buy her Crocs. I gave in. I bought them. She put them on her feet and she's like, "Oh, they are ugly." And I was like, "Yeah, they are." And who wears them to school multiple times a week? My daughter. So we do things all the time because of this social pressure. And that's my argument, is that not everybody is dismissive, but they're the Generation Z is adopting all of these dismissive dating trends, and they're participating in them reluctantly. They don't want to, but they're doing it because this is what is done.
I can't help but feel this is a bit self-perpetuating in the sense that you used the word courage earlier when we were talking about approaching, typically a man approaching a woman at a bar, and I think that is exactly it. Like I would be so uncomfortable if I had to do that now still,
Yeah.
for a number of reasons, but I've come to terms with that in general when you're operating as a productive human being. Again, this is in the nature of like goodness or whatever. A lot of times you have to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
A great example of this is, and I've since gotten engaged since me and you last talked, which is
Congratulations.
Thank you. But like when I asked my fiance's father for like permission if I could ask her.
You asked. That's amazing, because I don't think that happens as much anymore.
Well, that's my point. It's like I did not want to do that at all. I was like, we were at this lake house and it was just me and him on the dock. He was fishing and we were down there for probably like 20 minutes. And the whole time I was like, dude, just ask, like, just say it.
Just say it.
And when finally he was like about to go back to the house, I was like, okay, like it's now or never. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And so it took courage for me to do that, which is a silly thing to say. And obviously looking back, it wasn't a problem. And in fact, like he admires me probably a little bit more because of that.
Facts, yeah.
But whether it's approaching somebody or initiating in a conversation, I think that in a lot of ways, it doesn't even have to be relational either. It could be like getting in shape. Everybody knows you should exercise, but everybody's like, no, it takes courage to go to the gym or whatever. And I feel like that is what we're missing, is a willingness to do something, even though at a certain level you don't want to do it. It's like,
oh yeah,
I want a long-term partner. That's what it takes to get one.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was the conversation I was having over and over and over again in these interviews. It was, are you happy with the status quo of dating? Nobody was. Everybody said they did not like it, men and women. So why are you dating this way? Well, it's just the way it is. And this is not, I think a lot of people think, the first time I heard my students talk about the talking phase, I said, a man made that up as a joke, right? I said, no woman said, let's create this thing that's very ambiguous and can last forever, and let's make it really confusing. Like, no woman was like, this is good. And I joked that a man made that up, but because traditionally men are more dismissive than women are. Gen Z is different though. Women are becoming more and more and more dismissive in the Gen Z culture. And a lot of that is thanks to, Lizzo and Beyonce, and I can buy myself flowers, and I can, write my own name in the sand, and I don't need a man mentality. And that idea is very pervasive in young women's lives and in the dating world. So I think that, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is just, it's very fascinating to me that they're willing to do these things that they know in their head they don't want to do, but it's almost like drone-like. They're like, I will do these things because it's the way it is. I had a male student ask me last week for advice. He said he was talking in the talking phase to this girl, and she said that she wanted to see him less. And I said, oh, okay. How do you feel about that? And he said, well, I want to see her more. I want to spend all my time with her. I really like her. And Jenny, I really think that she could, be something serious. And I've never felt this way about someone before. And I said, okay, so tell her that. And he was like, no.
Yeah.
No, I could never tell her that. And I said, what do you have to lose? tell her how you feel. If you feel something, say it. And I feel like when I was in my 20s and in my teens, it was, if you feel it, say it. And people just would say how they felt all the time. And now everyone is walking around tiptoeing around these new relationships because they're so scared to be too much. I heard that so many times. Well, I wouldn't want to be too much, including the student last week. He was like, I don't want to come off as too much. And I said, you're minimizing your relational needs. I mean, if you say this and she says, well, I still cannot see you more, then this is not compatible. This is not going to work. But if you say, okay, and you just give her, all this space that she says she needs, and you're just pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down, that's not fair to you. But he was just so scared to do it because that's just not what people do in their age group. They just don't tell each other how they feel, especially early on. And this is not that early on. He had been in this talking phase for 4 months with this girl. That's not early. To me, to them, that's just very early. So
my now fiance went to my sister's wedding 4 months into our relationship.
Yeah. And some of that is in my opinion, it's like a compatibility of attachment outlooks, right? So you two probably were on the same wavelength, and that's why you were able to get as close as you were quickly. But a lot of young people are dating people who are not. And so it's hard for them to manage that. And they're being told by everyone in the media, in the music, in conversations with friends that you can't be too much. Mm-hmm. Too much is too much. And you have to be careful that you don't come off as a stage 5 clinger, right? That you don't come off as this crazy lunatic who's in love with someone 2 months in. It's possible to be in love with someone 2 months in. Yeah. It is possible.
And I also can't help but feel that the hard, whether it's approaching a person in real life and then telling them how you actually feel, that's all practice in leading up to. If you can't do that, that's easy compared to when you have to talk to your partner about like a sexual preference that you have.
Yeah, like hard stuff, right?
Yeah. We're like, what do we do with our kids after like this person's been bullied at school, like coming to a decision. And so a situation like that is nothing compared to like, hey, I'm really interested in you and I think we should hang out more.
That's what I said. Just tell her. You don't have to say, I'm falling in love with you, which he disclosed he kind of was. You don't have to say that, but you can say, I really care about you. And the distance is not allowing us to move anywhere in this relationship, wherever it could go. And just the idea that young people are so fearful to do the things that they want to do is worrisome to me. And
I have heard this before, and I'm interested to know your take on it, but does the Me Too movement have any effect on this at all? Like, I think there's a huge fear. Number one, in general, there's a fear of rejection, but also like sexual harassment is a real problem and something that you should worry about. And obviously, that was something that needed to take place, but I'm sure that has an effect to it as well.
Yeah, I totally think it plays a huge role. I think that, I'm the mom of 3 boys, and I worry very much about if they're going to cross a boundary with someone and whether they intended to or not. I mean, they're very young at this point. So, but it's a fear of mine having 3 boys. And it's always been a fear having a daughter that someone's going to cross a boundary with her. But I think that it plays a huge role. Like, I think men are very scared to cross a boundary with a woman, whether it is physically, emotionally, verbally, very scared. Yeah. And this definitely plays into it.
And especially in like the college population, when oftentimes like party and alcohol and drugs are involved, that convolutes everything, right?
Yes, definitely. It doesn't make it easy, for sure.
Yeah. I'm curious if, if you've looked into, is there any difference with this as it relates to initiation, I'm talking about initiation of a conversation. Is it the same regardless of means, like whether it's in person or online, or does the actual medium online, whether it's a virtual message on a
Mhm.
social media platform or a dating app like Tinder or Bumble, have any differences of outcomes in any way with these things?
I mean, I think the initial connection doesn't, I mean, you're asking if, if you meet on a dating app, is there a likelihood of success, right? I mean, that's what we want to know. Or do you have to meet in person for it to be more successful? I think that initial connection is not as, however that happens, is not as important as right afterwards, right? I do not think that you can build a interesting, intimate, deep connection with someone by sending them snaps of your day every day and doing that for weeks. You are not doing anything. There is no relationship building happening there. And from my study, it was mostly a college thing there, where the college students said they snapped because it's fun and because it's casual and it's not too much, and so you don't want it to be too much. They don't want it to be that at all. They want it to be casual, and it's just fun and exciting. Whereas people who were out of college in the study said that snapping was childish.
Mm.
And if someone, many women said, if a man asked me for my Snapchat, what, I don't have Snapchat, so I don't even know what it's called, like handle, then I would be offended, right? I would say, no, I have a phone. You may call me on my phone. And so I don't think it matters as much about that very first initial connection. But if you are going to try to date this person or get in the talking phase with this person or see if this person could be someone that you might ever want to date, you have got to have verbal conversations with them, whether it's face to face or on the phone or on FaceTime. But texting and sending snaps, while you can do that, it has to be in addition to
Mm.
the verbal conversation. We as humans need to talk to one another to build intimacy. No matter how much you think following someone on Instagram makes you their best friend, we have to actually communicate verbally with each other to have intimacy. We have to have those long conversations, especially in romantic relationships. We have to have those long conversations that go from topic to topic to topic to topic. And those can happen early on, and I think should happen early on.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say that. When I met my fiance, we had a class together. It was the semester that we got shut down for COVID.
Yeah.
And so we had like seen each other and engaged briefly in real life for like a second, and
Yeah.
then we went online and we found each other on social media, connected that way. But I remember thinking, I was probably like 3 weeks into the
Mhm.
lockdown at that point. Like, if I don't hang out with this, we were Snapchatting. And by the way,
Yeah.
I think if my opinion on this would mean
Yeah.
anything, I think people would view Snapchat as like a better than text, worse than face to face, because like I can send a picture
Yeah.
of my face and then type my message, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Uh,
it's like a middle ground.
yeah, and I think that's a cop out, right? Because it's like, well, it's not quite like just messaging, right? But
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking then, like, oh, I'm kind of into this person. We need to hang out soon, or this isn't going to work at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to miss the window of excitement. And so
Yeah.
I've actually not really thought about this. Probably was pretty risky during lockdown. We would meet in town and we would hang out.
Yeah.
I don't think our parents know that we did that.
Yeah.
And if they listen to this episode, are bad for putting everybody at risk. But I do remember thinking that, like, I gotta hang out with this person and see what she's like in real life.
Yeah.
Obviously, it worked out great.
Yeah.
But that's very interesting. Is there a window of time from like initial contact from online to when you see in person that you've ever looked at?
No, I haven't. And I think, again, to each their own. The part about the talking phase that irritated me the most is that there is a general consensus and understanding that you can be in the talking phase with multiple people, and it is an expectation, right? It's like until you have the conversation where it's an exclusive dating relationship, someone could be snapping or texting or phone calls or dating or having sex with multiple people. And I've from just my small little study, it seems like men do that more than women. But there were plenty of women who were in the group who were like, oh yeah, right now I'm in the talking phase with 3 different guys. And I'm like, do they know that? And she's like, well, I would think they would expect that. And
Yeah.
it's like, that is mind blowing to me that I think when previous generations dated, you kind of had an idea that maybe there could have been another person. But I think the expectation from my generation and before was once you are, going out to eat with this person, once you are making out, once you are having deep conversations, it was more of an expectation that maybe you weren't exclusive, but that this person wasn't doing this exact same thing with 3 other people. And it happened. Sure, it happened. But, and those people were labeled players, which was a derogatory thing. But now they're not even labeled with a derogatory term. It's just an expectation that is likely what's happening. And if it's not, then great. But
Yeah, that touches on what you said earlier with there's no rules, because you saying that surprises me. Like, I've talked to girls, and when I start doing that, in my mind, it's like, okay, we're not like serious, but we're exclusive, and we're going to see how this goes.
Yeah.
To that example too, what's weird is like my mom, I dated this girl number of years ago who, like, I called her my girlfriend, and we were it didn't last more than like 3 or 4 months. But if I were to bring that up in front of my mom, she would have been like, I would hardly call her your girlfriend. You guys didn't even date. And so it's even perpetuated by like an older generation too, in that context, where in my mind, like, we were exclusive to each other, even though it didn't really end up working out. Like, to me, it's all the same thing. So even you saying that blows my mind. And
it did. I was very shocked that they just expect that there's going to be like just the likelihood of this person doing what they're doing with you with other people is there. And it's like, oh, well, I guess I'll just deal with it. And again, that goes back to that reluctantly coping with these dating practices that they don't like. They don't like them. And they're just like, okay, I guess I'll do it because it's just the way it is. And so I don't know if I'm encouraging a revolt or like no more dating until it's changed. But something is happening in this generation where they want deep, serious connection, but they're having a really hard time getting there because all of the things that they're supposed to do, they don't allow that to happen. Or they make it happen at a slower pace, or they make it happen later. And so they're just all the trends that they've accepted are not allowing them to achieve the goals that they want. So they're like creating this identity, like curating almost this fake identity of hyper independence, but secretly and privately and quietly, all they want is connection.
Yeah. It's almost like outwardly expressing desire. So, I want connection, so I'm going to sleep around and talk to lots of different people, instead of outwardly expressing it or communicating it to somebody else or some specific person. Like, generally speaking, I think people who would cheat on somebody, it comes from a place of they're not content with their current situation in whatever facet. Maybe it's communication or it's sexual or whatever. And in all reality, obviously these things build up and up and up, and then they explode. If you just communicated it early on, like, hey, I'm not happy how this went, or I would prefer something if it was this way, then you avoid all of those issues that pop up later on, for the most part, right? And so it seems like it's just the more we're moving in a way that it prolongs things. Snapchat prolongs the connection in
Mhm.
person.
Yeah.
The talking phase, even like at the end of the talking phase, you have to have a like, so what are we conversation, which
Yeah.
is tough to have. And
Yeah.
it could be avoided if you just said, hey, would you like to meet me for a cup of coffee? And like, I'm really interested in you and to see how things go. Like
Yeah.
the talking phase is prolonging a hard conversation.
Oh,
And
yeah, and the people who don't have the conversation end up in this thing called a situationship, which is like nobody, one or both people don't want to advance it. Nobody wants to have the conversation about it, but they're kind of, I kept hearing this word placeholder. So you're in a situationship with someone when there's no one else of interest. You know, one of you at least knows that nothing's going to amount from this relationship, but it's comfortable, it's fun. To everyone else, you look like you're in a relationship, but it's not going anywhere in one of the person's mind, and so they're kind of just like using you as a placeholder until something else better comes along, and no one's willing to have the conversation, so the person doesn't even realize they're a placeholder. They're just confused in a sexual or emotional or both relationship, and they're doing everything that dating people do, but they don't call each other boyfriend and girlfriend. They don't tell other people they're in an exclusive relationship, and they definitely don't talk to each other about it. So like the situationship results from a lack of that conversation.
what I'm that doesn't make any sense to me. What's that for? Like a relationship is a system of support, right? Where you know as an individual you have your stuff going on and you know you have resources available to you to
Mhm.
help you out. And like if I didn't have a relationship, then I it seems like a situationship
Okay,
would just
okay,
drag you down.
okay. I agree with you. It's very bizarre to me, but last year I had two students who were in a situationship together, and I spoke to both of them separately. And I just straight up said, "What are you two doing? Like, why are you in this?" They were in the class together. They never sat near each other.
Did they
They
take it
never
on purpose to try to resolve their
they
issues?
never talked to each other. They were having sex all the time. They were hanging out all the time. Their friend groups knew that they were in whatever they were in together. It was actually another student who came to my office and said, "You know that so and so and so and so are in a situationship?" And I said, "No, they are not. They never talk to each other. They don't even know each other." And she's like, "No, they are." And so I called them both in my office. I said, "Let's talk about this. What are you doing? Like you like I don't understand why this is happening." And he said he didn't see a future with her. She was good in bed. She's very fun to be around. She is a good friend. It's exciting. He doesn't have anyone else. Why not? That was literally what he said to me as his reasoning for why he wasn't in a real relationship with her. I asked her, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I don't know. I don't know. I I don't know. I think he likes me. He keeps wanting to hang out with me, but we don't go on dates. We hang out in groups and we have sex and we talk on the phone and we text, but a lot of times in public we aren't near each other." And I was like, "No, you don't even talk to each other in my class. I mean, you're in a class together where everybody talks to everybody and you two don't talk to each other. Like, what are you doing? Is this what you want?" And she's like, "No, I guess I'm holding on to the hope that he will come around." And I said, "He is not. You This is not what you want." And I even said, "Are you in a friends with benefits relationship?" To which both of them said, "No, that is a negotiated relationship, right? There's a conversation for
Yeah.
friends with benefits. For friends with benefits, it's two people who say, "Okay, we're good friends. We like having sex with each other. We're not going to get serious. Are you agree? Okay, let's shake on it." Right? That's friends with benefits. Situationship is just this weird ambiguous place where one person's usually confused and the other person is just not willing to say, to end it. It's like he didn't want to end it. He really liked her friendship. He liked having sex with her. He enjoyed hanging out with her. He didn't want to end it, but he knew it wasn't going anywhere. And he kept saying to me, like, I'm graduating, so, it'll just fizzle out. So it's almost a fear of, and a lack of courage of ending it too, of doing the breakup, because he did care about her, but he didn't see a future with her. She was not the one.
Have you observed if that relationship, that system is common with situationships? Man is doing this almost for like sexual benefit, and then maybe female, there's a lot of relational uncertainty.
Yeah, so I think that happens a lot from just the conversations that I had in this study. A lot of the females were like, oh yeah, I've been in the situationship here and I was just confused and he was just dragging me along and I thought he was going to come too, but he never did. But when I talked to men about situationships, they claimed that they were in ones where the woman was doing it and was dragging them along. So I don't know the answer to that. Stereotypically, I think in most of our heads, it's the man that's doing the dragging and the place holding. But
and also,
like
if you ask the men, they,
I mean, I asked these men in this study.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, if you asked them, it's self-reported, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just a conversation. It's a podcast interview. It's a conversation that we're recording.
I'm sure that had a lot to do with it too. Like, sure. Yeah, we're being dragged along.
Yeah. And so, yeah, some of it is what could have easily been that, right? But they argued that, I mean, and maybe I had a lot of the people who were participants in the study knew me. Mm-hmm. And so many of them had been students of mine. And so I think that also played a role. Like the men who are taking my classes are a different breed of men. Right? That are like, oh, I want to take a class on communication and romantic relationships so I can be a better partner.
Yeah,
like
that was me.
Yeah, that's a different kind of guy. So I think that maybe played a role too. But I can't say who's doing the dragging along more.
That makes me curious about if like a biological clock has any impact on this. Like
I'm sure
I've heard this before, and I think it's pretty well discussed. Just
sure.
The whole like the timeline thing you talked about before of like we got to do this for this long and then this for this long and then we get married and then I won't have kids until this time is more important generally for females just because they're more in tune with that biological clock.
Oh yeah, and they've been bred in our culture to care about this biological clock. Women are inundated with this idea that they should have a clock, they should have a timeline, they should have a deadline, they should have a pact with their best friend that if they don't get married by the time they're this age, blah, yada, yada, yada. I watched my best friend's wedding with Julia Roberts last night with my daughter, and she was like, they agreed that if they didn't get married by 28, they would get married to each other. And I said, yeah, it was kind of a thing in the 90s that it was a joke that people, I don't know anyone who really did that, but it was in the movies a lot. And she's like, that is so stupid. And I said, yeah. And she's like, you have more time after 28. And I said, all right, okay. I remember watching that as when I was her age and thinking, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Someone you really get along with, and then you just make that pact. Because I grew up in the 90s when that was part of the cultural, idea.
Yeah. What would you say to people who are struggling with this? Obviously this conversation in and of itself has a lot of uncertainty just because every individual is going to be different. My brain goes to what you said at the beginning of like, if you feel like something's wrong, then do something about it.
Yeah. I think that we need to. So, Dr. Gabor Mate, he says that all humans have these two internal needs: the need for attachment and the need for authenticity. And when we are growing up, attachment is much more important to us because we want to be attached to our adults in our life, right? We want to be attached to our parents, and our brain tells us as kids that we will not survive if we are not attached to them emotionally, physically. And so we many times as kids push away the need for authenticity. So I don't want to lose my attachment to mom. Mom says my emotions are out of control, so I better tone my emotions down, right? So I better like get rid of some of my authenticity. And I think that that's what is happening in Gen Z, right? So they want that attachment so bad, no matter how small or breadcrumby or minor it is, that they are willing to suppress their feelings, suppress their emotions, suppress their words. They're willing to not say what they want to really say in fear of losing that attachment that we all want so much. So they're putting on a mask and they're saying, I'm this person. I'm the person you need me to be or you want me to be. I'm okay with this situationship. I actually like it. This is fun. When deep down they're like, this is terrible. This is confusing and I hate it, because that need for that attachment is so strong. And so that's kind of what I think is happening. And I think we've always done that, right? We bend over backwards. You hear people say all the time, like, oh, you bent over backwards for your husband. You did everything he wanted to do so that you could be in that relationship with him. And you put yourself and your own needs to the side. Or, you followed your wife all over the country, even though you didn't want to move because you were so scared of losing that attachment. And so the problem now, though, is the attachment is like so tiny. They're just giving you little tiny bits with the way dating is going right now. And so people are doing backflips. I can't believe it sometimes when I talk to young people where they're like, I think I'm falling in love with him, or I think I really like her. And I'm like, then just say it. And they're like, oh, no. I could never. And it's as if I told them to, kill their dog. Like,
Yeah.
it is such a huge, oh, no. Give me something else. Jenny, tell me something else I could do. Something easier than that. And so they're doing backflips to get this little tiny bit of attachment.
I interviewed a guy a couple weeks ago. We talked about masculinity and the various traits of like productive and healthy masculinity. And he recommended this book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. I'm actually almost done with it, but it's like the 4 archetypes of masculinity.
Yeah.
And I'm reading through it and it makes a lot of sense. I've said this, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
And I always say this, I'm like, I don't know what it is, but when you just roll around and wrestle people and strangle them, like you just want to hug everybody afterward.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sometimes say that, but like that's just my nature. I like to do those things and engage in that. And from an outside perspective, it could be viewed as violence, like wrestling or combat. It's violence, and it's not always a bad thing. Like a beautiful expression of violence is it makes me feel like who I am, and then it makes me just feel better, and then I'm a better partner, and I can think clearer, etc. And so it sounds a lot like you are on the same page in that of like figure out what your nature is or what you authentically want to do and try your best to align with that.
Yeah, don't change who you are because you want attachment to another human being. You can have both. You can be authentic to who you are and you can have attachment. If you feel like you're changing who you are to get that attachment, it's not going to be healthy. It's at some point it's not going to be good. And so you can stay authentic to who you are, which many people don't even know who that person is. So kind of figure that out first. Stay authentic to who you are and get attachment. There is someone out there that will let you have both.
Good deal. Is there anything else that you would like to add when it comes to the curious patterns of the Gen Z daters?
Well, I don't think so. I think I think I'm going to keep studying them because I see them all the time and they ask fascinating questions. I'm just worried that they're engaging in activities and behaviors and suppression that is going to hurt them in the long run or set them up for failure. So, be authentic and you can get attachment.
And then where can people find more from you and all the information and stuff like that you put out?
So on Instagram, I am at Relationships Love Happiness. In the podcast world, I have a podcast on all the platforms called Love Matters with Dr. Jennie Rosier. Right now, it has one season where I explain the science of attachment from birth to death. So it's a 14 episode explanation of this science of attachment. I hope in the new year, I'm on research leave in the spring, so I'm hoping to come up with season 2 and explain another single concept from beginning to end. And so if you really want to know more about attachment, that is the podcast for you to listen to. And then I have an Etsy store where I sell digital workbooks. It is the Relationship Academy with Dr. Jennie Rosier. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. I'll make sure I put all that stuff in the description and show notes and things like that.
All right,
good deal. Well, thank you very much for doing this. It was an honor to have you on the show again.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Yeah, we now have 2 hours of our conversation living on the internet.
That's great. I look forward to the 3rd hour.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Good People. If you enjoyed my conversation with Jennie, make sure you check out all of the links in the description below. Before you head out, if you guys are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. If, while you were listening to this, perhaps you know someone who is struggling with a situationship, please share this episode with them, perhaps your grandma. We'll see you next time.